Hello, welcome to this week's episode of FireDEV, a fireside chat with people in the industry. Today, my guest is Abdalla Ramadan. Abdullah, how are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. You're a freelance game developer. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? What you do as a freelance developer, and some of the projects that you've worked on in the past.
Yes, of course, yes. So, I started my game development journey around like 12 years ago. So I started. I went to Japan and worked in a game development company. And yes, and when I was there, I decided that I wanted to create my own indie titles. And yes, I created a group and. I created an indie visual novel and sold it in Japan. And this was the start. I named the company. It was Ramadan Soft. And actually, my first visual novel it was uh, relatively successful. Uh, Relative, of course, to other indie visual novels in Japan. And yes, this encouraged me to proceed in the game development direction. Uh, it didn't go so well after that, and I had to go back to my home country, which is Egypt, and I created another indie title using Unity that wasn't very successful. However, after that I gained a lot of knowledge with Unity, and I started to work as a freelancer creating games. So this was like around like 10 years ago or something like that. And as a freelancer, I was relatively uh, sustainable. The freelance work was sustaining my life since then. Yes, so as a freelancer, I created several titles. One of them is on Steam. It's called Age of Grit, and I created like almost 80% of the programming for it. I worked recently on a VR title, which is totally basable on Quest. I worked actually with other members of my team, and I don't have permanent teams in. I don't have permanent members in my team, but I do have my connections that I recruit when I have a bigger project. And To be honest, actually, most of the work I did as a freelancer is not games. A lot of it was like VR simulation, for example, educational interactive systems, for example, and stuff like that. I would say that it's not easy as a freelancer game developer to get like your dream game development job. So to work on triple A titles or stuff like that, especially that don't have like a permanent agency with permanent team members. So yes, so I think the most uh, successful titles I worked on was totally based on Oculus Quest and Age of Great on Steam.
Okay, so what made you, move over to Japan? Because you're originally from, is it Turkey or Egypt?
No, I'm Egyptian.
Egyptian. So you're originally from Egypt. So what made you go over to Japan? Because I find, you know, to move to any country for anyone at any stage of their life is, a big deal. And for you to make that move, and then for it to be, on the other side of the world for you, because it's not like you just, went, relatively local, so you knew the culture. It was totally different. So what inspired that move, and how long was you there for?
Yes, so it was definitely a difficult decision for me and for my family. I wasn't married then, but for my parents and brothers. But yes, so actually, when I started to learn computer and programming, I was like in middle school, and my dream was always to create games. So I had this like very old computers that was that used to connect to TV. Okay, and it has basic programming language in it, and I used to use basic, and I learned it using programming at that time, and I wanted to create a game. Of course, I couldn't create a real game at that time, but this was my dream. This was my the beginning of my journey as a game developer. And yes, so when I joined, when I got into the university, computer science, I studied computer science, and my main goal was to create games. And I learned like stuff that other people, everyone else in Egypt at that time was aiming for web development and application development, because this was like more than like 18 years ago or something like that. And this was the booming industry then. You create websites for businesses. You create application for them. You create accounting applications for them. So database was very important and stuff like that. But I wasn't interested in any of it. I was interested in game development. That's why I learned C++, for example. Of course, everyone learns C++ in the university, but I deep dived into C++ when no one else did that. I deep dived into DirectX and OpenGL when no one else did that, and this was always my dream and my goal. So after I graduated from the university, I didn't find a place for me in Egypt, because at that time there were plenty of opportunities as a web developer or as a application developer or mobile application developer, and very good opportunities actually. A lot of my colleagues in the university, got very successful and have their own created their own companies in those fields, because they started with those fields, and those fields were booming in Egypt at that time, and they made a fortune out of it. But I wasn't interested in any of that, and I tried to work as a game developer. And of course, there was very little companies. I think like in whole of Egypt, there was like two or three game development companies. And of course, when you have this little of something in the industry, there is no need for a lot of employees. So I couldn't get a job into that, and of course no one was interested in investing in like game development. No one was talking about this, and yes, so I decided that I need to move out of Egypt to get into an environment where I can work as a game developer, and this is how I took this decision to move to Japan, because of course Japan is famous for game development. And at the time I I saw that moving to the east is better than the west, because at this time there was a lot of tensions in Western countries against like people called Abdalla Ramadan. Yes, so Japan I thought it would be like something that I would be able to pursue my dream in. Yes, so this was the main reason I took this decision. Is I really wanted to get into the game industry, and moving to abroad to Japan was like my only choice.
Okay, yeah, I mean that makes sense. Obviously, I'm guessing it's probably a bit better now in Egypt, where now that we're in 2024, the app stores, has come out many like over a decade ago. A lot of resources, or YouTube as well. The amount of resources that are available there, so it's probably a bit more doable, without having to move. But yeah, that does make sense. So back then, when you're looking into OpenGL, WebGL, some of these really hardcore, areas of graphics and gaming, the resources now I find aren't the best, to be honest, in English. So, how did you learn it, and how did you find the resources back then when English is not your first language, and when there's just little resources anyway? So, what was that process like? It must have been very painful.
Yes, it has been very painful actually, and I remember that I bought a book It was I don't remember its name, but it was using DirectX and C++ to create like games. And yes, and I to actually to be able to buy it, I had to go to Cairo. Okay, because I'm in Alexandria, another city, and it was very expensive. And yes, and those books were very rare in Egypt, and not only rare but also very expensive. And usually they don't exist, and you have like to pre-order them and put like a huge deposit and stuff like that. So it was pretty painful to get this like information in game development, and at that time, especially that I started to learn in college, so that was like almost 20 years ago, even before I graduated. So it was very hard for me to do this. And to be honest, I had to get some PDFs online for some of the books that I wanted to learn from, not because I like piracy, but because there was no other choice. It was just impossible to get those books in Egypt. Yes, and even buying it from abroad and having it like delivered to your country, even this wasn't easy at that time. Uh, Amazon didn't have this shipping abroad at that time, and yes, it was basically impossible. And there was no service like shop and ship like, at that time, or maybe there was, but I wasn't aware of it at the time. It was something new. So yes, I struggled with this kind of information. I remember that I learned a lot from the some of the books that I bought here in Egypt, and which were very difficult to find, but at the same time they were very resourceful for me. And online forums. I remember there was like forums that they are now dead, but and it's sad to hear that they are dead. But like there was like gamedev.net and other forums, because of course this was like pre-social media era, and those forums were very resourceful. And I remember that I did a lot of questions, a lot of beginner questions, and thankfully there were people that were very, open, and they answered me, and this helped me a lot actually, because I was still a beginner. I didn't have any access to a lot of resources that others have access to, and yes, this helped me a lot actually. So yes, so I learned from that, and I also learned from some PDFs that I could got my hand on online, and even that wasn't easy. It was hard, but yes, so I struggled a lot, but I think I learned I learned a lot during that time.
Okay. I mean, you've gone a little quiet. Have you gone back from the mic a little bit?
I'm sorry. No, I have like earphones.
Okay, no,
Should I switch them?
no. This is better again. Obviously, if you speak a little louder, it should be fine. But yeah, you just went quiet for the last 10 seconds. But
Okay.
no, that shouldn't be a problem. Yeah, the resources, especially in those sort of industries and those technologies, yeah, would have been very limited. And obviously, here that you had to you had to go from one city to another. You had to go to Cairo. Like, how far? Like, how long was that journey to get to Cairo from where you was? And what did you drive? Did you go by bus, train?
No, I went by bus. It wasn't very. From here to Cairo, it's like 2 hours and a half or 3 hours, or something like that. Well, as a student, it was something that, yes, it was costly. Of course, the bus I rode. Uh, I think it was a bus or train, and yes, so it's not it wasn't the hardest thing in the world to move to Cairo to get something and get back, but the hard part was finding the book itself, because yes, It was rare even in Cairo. So it wasn't like okay, you go to Cairo and then your problems are solved. So yes, but still, it was still something that you have to consider, because if you finally find a book in a library in Cairo and you want to get it, you have to keep in mind that you still need to go in a journey that would take the whole day, basically.
Okay. So like how did you go about finding the book? Like was you going or like did some of these bookstores have websites? Was it forums that was saying that you go there? Or was it just a matter of getting the numbers of different stores that had books and ringing them and asking, or did you go there and then start looking around? Because like you said, it's not a matter of you get to Cairo, every store has it, you're solved, and you leave Cairo 10 minutes later. There's probably only a few stores that had it. So how was that?
Yes, so first of all, connections. So I had people who had the connections that would call, give me the number of libraries there. Unfortunately, there wasn't like websites that had like that has an index of all the books some library had. This wasn't or a store had. This wasn't a thing then, which made the things difficult. But if I have a friend that went to a store I would take the number of the store from them, I would ask the store, and yes, it took a lot of calls to get something useful, and this was one approach. Okay, to call the stores and make sure they had the book that I wanted before I would go to them. And another thing would be, we had a yearly festival in Cairo for books and stuff like that, and a lot of bookstores would go there. And yes, I went there, not every year, but I went there several times. And yes, because those would be very huge, and you have like every single store basically, even stores outside of Cairo would go to Cairo for this like festival. I usually find like gems at those events, and I would buy them. So yes, those were my two approaches. If it is in Alexandria, I would go to library directory, or to the store directory, and I would ask them, because it's not very hard to do this in the same city. Yes, so it was a journey. It wasn't straightforward. But yes, I could find quite good resources after some struggle. But yes, I learned a lot from them.
Okay. And nowadays, what technologies do you use, and what languages and libraries are you still using? OpenGL, C++, WebGL with, I guess, what JavaScript, or are you moved on to more engine work? What are you doing these days?
Yes, so unfortunately, as a freelancer, you don't get to do what you want to do. You get to do what the client want you to do, and
Oh yeah.
yes, so no, it's extremely hard to get a client that want to work like on low level stuff, or using DirectX or OpenGL or even WebGL directly, right? Everyone now uses a game engine, and of course it makes sense to use those low level technologies in some industries, right? For example, if you are creating a game engine, or if you are creating something that is very sensitive to performance, and stuff like that. But yes, I can't get clients like those. So for like games, for applications, or simulations, educational stuff, they would usually, uh, it used to be Unity all the time. Everyone is asking for Unity. Now it's Unreal. Not always, but a lot of people now are asking for Unreal, even if Unreal is an overkill for what they want to do, but they want to use Unreal, so you have to do it the way they want. Yes, so I mostly right now I mostly use Unity. for my client work, and sometimes we use other stuff like 3GS for stuff that is that you want to be performant on mobile browsers and stuff like that. Yes, so most of the work is Unity. Some is 3GS, some is Unreal.
Okay, that's a interesting point that you made, that the on something like Unreal, very big, very powerful, but it can be overkill for some projects, some smaller projects, and some smaller clients. It could probably hinder their progress, and they'll be better equipped for using something a bit more streamlined and a bit a bit more basic. But you do get clients that will say, we want to use this, and there's no point arguing with them. How do you personally handle those scenarios, those types of jobs where that there's an alternative? It might be a free alternative, it might never be paid, but they they want to use Unreal or whatever huge software they want to use, but instead of it taking 2 months, it could be done maybe in 6 weeks, and it'd be easier and less hassle in general if they use this other thing. How do you handle that versus thinking, okay, this is a job, we're going to come in, work for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, whatever it is, and then just do the work, versus actually having those opinions and knowing what voices your opinions to voice and when to stay silent, because that's also very important, that you don't step on anyone's toes.
Yes, I actually this is very important, and it's something that I have been struggling with for over like 10 years as a freelancer, and actually even as an employee. Because even when I worked in Japan, I had disagreement with my managers in the technologies used, the approach used, and yes, at first I used to be very vocal of my opinions, and yes, I found out that this approach is like always backfire. Not always, but like 90% of the time, it backfired, and I started to be more cautious as I grew. I wouldn't call myself old, but as I had more experience dealing with people, so sometimes even if I think that an approach is wrong, I will just do whatever the client would, or my manager or want, and yeah, so it's hard to tell exactly when to talk and when not. But for example, when I was working in Age of Great, which is a game on Steam right now, I was working with the founder of IQ Soup, and he was very open. Okay, he would listen to me, and yes, I had a great experience working with him, and he is very thankful for me that I suggested to him a way to manage the game development, and he tells me, he always tells me, even now, we the game was already published on Steam like years ago, but he still thinks that the way that I have suggested to him to manage the game development is what made the game real. Okay, because it started as a Kickstarter game, and I'm pretty sure a lot of games or Kickstarter, they have like successful campaigns, but then they never deliver, or just they take too many years because they struggle with managing the project correctly. And there is no correct way to manage the project, but there are plenty of wrong ways to do it, definitely. And yes, so he was very happy with me, and yes, this encouraged me to be like always vocal, and always like tell the client, or that I think that the direction you are moving wouldn't be very successful, you should do this and do that. But I actually found that most other people, other than IQ Sub that I was working with, his name was Andy. So other than that, most people would just be angry with me if I suggested something like that. And yes, I right now, if I think that a client approach is very wrong from the beginning. I just wouldn't take the job. I wouldn't discuss with him. If his approach is relatively good, okay, if it's not what I would think is perfect, but it's still something that is that would deliver a result. I would just work with them and wouldn't be too vocal about what how he could improve until we have like a long experience together. So if I work for him like for 6 months, 8 months, and then I would start to suggest things and stuff like that. So this is my approach right now, and I think this works well. Uh, um, yes, but it is also the reason why I don't take a lot of jobs. Actually, a lot of most of the jobs that would be proposed to me, or I would find on platforms like Upwork, I actually would never take because I can see that the client is moving in very wrong direction, and I just wouldn't bother to make him understand or tell him how he should do things because he's just so far away from what could be something successful.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, you definitely have to, be careful sometimes the clients that you work for, even the companies you work for. But I say clients, especially when you do freelance work, there can be a tendency of, maybe over promising to the client, or the client wanting more than, they've agreed to or paid for. Like, again, that's another thing. When you're doing freelance work, how do you go about it? Do you do it, okay, here's an hourly daily rate, or is it, here's a fixed price for the project? If I deliver in a week, same. If I deliver in a month, the same. Well, what's your preferred model?
So this is really a very big subject, but I would say that getting freelance jobs in general as a game developer who knows what he's doing, he's professional, who is actually professional and knows what he's doing, is actually very hard. At least this is my experience. Because when you go to platforms like Upwork, for example, you get like tons of clients who want to create like huge mobile games for like $15,000. I had this client that I had discussed with like a few months ago, and yes, so he wanted to create like a huge mobile game, and he gave me an example. I asked him, for example, okay, how do you want this game to look like? And he sent me like World Bar Ace shooter, and I checked the game. It's a huge game. Okay, it's very very involved. It has like a back end, of course. It has and front end, and it has a lot of art, and it has a lot of things. And yes, after I studied it, and I thought, okay, this would take at least like 8 months or 10 months of development, and I would have like to create a huge team, like at least 13 people or 15 people. And yes, it would cost يعني, I said, uh, as a starter, we would need to fund this in the first year, at least like 500,000, $500,000, to be able to get this level of quality. And of course, we need to maintain the back end and maintain the user base for some time after this. And with a huge team, at least like uh, you know uh, 5, 6 back-end developers and some front-end developers for the events and stuff like that. And of course, he would have to pay for all of this. And he kept going on with the conversation, and I thought, okay, this client understands the level of work he wants to get done. And yes, after some back and forth, he told me, okay, but I have this other freelancer who told me he would do it for $15,000. And I was shocked. I don't understand. The artwork alone would take a lot more than that. It has top notch artwork, and it's very involved, and it has several game modes, and it has like the characters, they have like 3D models of them, and also they have like 2D portraits for them, and stuff like that. And they have like base building mode, and they have a sniping mode, and it's a huge game. So uh, you know, the Upwork is full with those kind of clients. And the problem is that they there are freelancers on Upwork who understand that those kinds exist, and who know, and they understand how to bull them to get like $15,000. And of course, whoever told him I will do it for $15,000, he would deliver something. Okay, that the client would think that okay, I made some progress, and who took the money, the freelancer would take the money, and of course the client would end up with something that he thinks, okay, I have a strong base to build upon. And then he would post another job. Okay, I have this base game, okay, and it just needs some additional features and some bug fixes. And I'm searching for someone who would do it for $500. And I met a lot of people like that. I had another client, and I discussed with on Upwork, and he had a game, okay, and he told me, okay, I have like this Japanese agency who created this game for me, and they don't respond to me anymore, and just needs some features and some bug fixes so that I can release. And then he sent me the game, and I check it, the source code for of what already done, and I can see that it's the worst template ever. It's not a game. It's not even a template. You can buy for $100 a platformer template that plays way better than what he sends me, right? And the problem is that he thinks that okay, we have a game, it just needs some fixes, and he wants to do it for $500. And I told him, no, 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 we have to get rid of all that and recreate the game from scratch, because this is not. Even if we start from a template on the asset store for $100, it would be a lot better than that. And of course, all those kind of projects die before they hit the stores, of course. And yes, you have always this those kind of problems. So this is why I have the tendency to always ask for like hourly rate, okay? Because for fixed projects, most of them they want to pay like ridiculously low prices for a lot of work that they just don't understand. And even if with this like and to get like this hourly projects is very very difficult, because a lot of clients would want to pay like $2 or $3 per hour, okay, or like $5 per hour, or stuff like that. And yes, I don't think that my experience is worth that. My so yes, so I tend to I always ask for hourly, okay, because clients usually get shocked when I ask them for like what it would really cost. Uh, yes, so and even with hourly, it's not easy to get over, for example, $40 per hour or something like that, which I think is what I should be getting for what I would deliver with my experience. Yes, so okay, I'm sorry, I went on and dragged a lot, but I think this answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually an interesting point where if you tell a client how much you want to charge fully, they just fall off the chair. They're just shocked by the price. Even if you halve that price, they would still say it's too much. But in my experience, like again, like with yours, if you say hourly or I usually do daily, but if you say like a shorter term rate, they're like okay, because in their head they're like, it's only going to take 2 weeks. But when 2 weeks, pass, because they've paid you for 2 weeks, and because the work obviously hasn't been completed to the level they wanted because their expectations were unrealistic, they're kind of stuck then. So that they either say, I'm not going to pay you anymore and I'll stop the project, but then they've wasted all that money, or they say, okay, I'm going to spend a bit more, get it to where I want it, and they end up spending as much, sometimes if not more, than they would have done with a fixed price. So that's definitely something uh, I think the takeaway for people that are looking to get into freelancing or contracting work is go for hourly or daily rates. and you'll be better off. And even though it's not easy to persuade the client to, obviously agree to a certain rate, it's easier than saying, oh, it's going to be 50,000, 100,000, even if that might be 6, 12, even 24 months of work. And that might, when you work it out, be like what it should be. If you say a daily rate and they get into 3 months, they they are in a position where they're kind of stuck, and they have to decide: do they abandon it, which probably won't want to do, or do they keep going and hope it gets done relatively quick?
Exactly. Yes, I would agree with you completely, and of course it's also important to be upfront with the client with your like time estimation. So you give me him like a monthly rate, for example, or daily rate, or an hourly rate. And yes, you say, okay, I know this is not going to take like a few weeks. This is going to take months, and it probably is not going to be done with me alone. You will either have to hire other people to get this done, or you can entrust me to hire other people, but of course you would pay for them to get this work done. And it, if you are honest, as a freelancer, as a game developer, it's harder to get jobs. And I think this is something that is causing me a lot of struggle as a freelancer, because I like to be honest and I like to be upfront, and this is why I struggle to get like good clients. But eventually I get them. Like I just finished work. I was working on Totally Baseball. It was a quest game. Okay, and it is I think one of the most famous baseball VR games. And yes, this was like a very good client. Okay, he appreciates what I'm doing. He understands what is involved in the work, and he appreciates what our work. Okay, and yes, but to get people like this, to get clients like this, if you are honest, it's not going to be difficult. So that's something you should be keeping in mind if you want to, if you have like a full-time job and you want to switch to a freelance work. You have to keep this in mind, that if you are being honest, it's hard to get good jobs. And also there's something else. If you are working in a good studio, if you are working on your dream games, okay, if you are creating the games that you always wanted to create, if you work as a freelancer, it would be very hard, because you would get clients that would, for example, want VR simulation. Those might be good jobs, okay? They might pay you well, but it might not be what you always want to create, for example. So it's something that I struggled with a lot, because I really want to add to my portfolio a triple A title, a PlayStation title, something like that. I want to add an action adventure title, but I never get this opportunity. And I try to create. I actually created my own action adventure game, but of course it's not polished, of course, because it's my own fund and my own team that I would base them, not for not very long, and it's not, it wouldn't attract like triple A studios to hire me, for example, to outsource some a part of their game development to me ever. So you would be stuck in this vicious cycle that you want to create something, your dream game, okay, or not your dream game, at least your dream demo, for example, to get clients into this category, okay, this like triple A category, for example, or perhaps mobile games, but high end mobile games, and you want to get something to create something like that to attract those kind of customers, but you lack the funds, you lack the team to create something like that, and you are stuck with clients that you know you, you create something that's not what you want, and you add the work to your portfolio, for example, a simulation VR game, VR application, and then you add this simulation, or training application to your portfolio, and this would attract more clients into this category that you don't like. So more clients would come to you asking for VR training application, right? Because that's what's in your portfolio, and you would be caught into this like vicious loop. And if you are creating like casual, hyper casual games, for example, is similar. If you want to get out from hyper casual game into like uh, higher in the mobile games or something like that, it wouldn't be easy. So it's something to keep in mind if you want to switch to a freelancer.
Okay, and why the decision to continue doing freelancing instead of going permanent? I know that's something that for people that are in the industry, that's either impermanent and thinking about, should they go contract or freelancing, or if they're doing contract and freelancing, should they go permanent, especially with, the perceived, stability, and I'll say partly the extra stability. Why have you stuck with the freelancing side of it instead of just going permanent and you're, working, you know, less within a certain budget and you're employed? And you're doing the work.
So I would say that a part of it is that I'm stuck as a game developer, and a part of it is that I want to be stuck as a game developer. So the first part is that okay, I went to Japan very early in my life. After I think it was like a few years after I graduated, and before that I didn't have like a solid professional career because I was just graduated. I did work in Egypt in mobile apps, but for very little, and then I moved to Japan and worked as a game developer. So now after I moved back to Egypt, this image as a game developer is stuck in the heads of whoever I would go interview. So if I apply to a company that are creating like for example mobile games, I'm sorry, not mobile games, but mobile applications or accounting applications for hospitals and stuff like that, and like database systems and stuff like that. They would look into the CV and told me, okay, is your professional, you have great professional experience, you have been to Japan and that's great, but none of this experience is relevant to us, you know. So I'm stuck as a game developer, and in Egypt there is no game development opportunities. At least at that time, when I returned to Japan, when I returned from Japan. So I had to go as a freelancer. So a part of it is that I had to do it, and of course another part is that I wanted to do it also. I wanted to continue be as a game developer because I eventually want to create to continue creating my own games. I did create my own games, but not my dream games yet. I want to continue create my own visual novels and games. So and I can't be an employee as a game developer in Egypt, and I can't be, and I can't go to Japan. Perhaps I can go again, but you know, I decided that I don't want to be in Japan anymore at the time. I had great experience there. I worked like for 1 year and a half, and but you know, as you said, different cultures. You don't know anyone there. You feel very lonely, and I'm for us Egyptians, and I think most for anyone, it's hard to be away from your family for so long. So yes, so my only choice was to be a freelance game developer. Otherwise, I wouldn't have work or maybe if a company accepts me, they would say, okay, I would treat you as a fresh graduate because you don't have any experience in the field that we are working on, for example. And then I didn't want that either. So I had to be a freelance game developer because there was there were no full time game developer jobs in Egypt at that time. And of course, as right now there are, I can get a job as a game developer in Egypt, but I think I'm making because I have created a great portfolio, and I have a lot of experience. I am better paid off as a freelancer. I don't think any company would pay me as I'm making out of freelance work. That's why I I'm not pursuing a full time job anymore right now.
Okay. What is the the gaming market, gaming industry looking like over in Egypt right now? Obviously, when you was first starting your journey, your career, it wasn't there's hardly anything there. You were having to travel from one city to another city to just get hold of a book, and even then it was difficult. What's it like now? And with all the layoffs that's been happening around the world in the UK and the US, has any of that travel, hit Egypt, or is that just going as normal, the market over there?
Yes, so actually, I about, I think like 3 or 4 years ago I went to Turkey, because even so the development in Egypt started to be, I think, it wasn't as huge as, or it's not the main focus. Okay. And in Turkey, so, like around 3 or 4 years ago, there was like a booming mobile game industry. Okay. And investments, a lot of companies would get like investments in $500,000 or $1 million and stuff like that, startups in the gaming sector. And you even had like this firms that would fund the game development companies and stuff like that. And I thought, okay, I would go to Japan, and I'm sorry, not Japan, to Turkey, and I would start my own. Uh, I get my office and start my own agency, because I was working as an agency. It's just it was a virtual agency, and I wanted to make it real. And I went to Turkey because it was far better than Egypt, right? Of course, I'm talking about game development, okay? And yes, and I rented an office. I have an office there. Actually, I still have an office there. I'm now in Egypt because Ramadan and Eid, and I wanted to visit my family, and I'm going back to Turkey. But I would say that this game development, boom in Turkey is now like cooling down, and the bubble have burst. And yes, because most of those companies were doing hyper casual games, and hyper casual, market was going down. And hyper casual was also not my main focus. I always wanted to do like VR games and PC games and stuff like that. Uh, yes, so this is for Turkey. Yes, the game industry in Turkey is affected negatively. Okay, impacted. As of Egypt, there was there was never a strong game development industry to start with. Yes, so I'm not following, the game development scene in Egypt. Okay, because I was like in Turkey for the past 3 years. But I would say in general, the IT sector in Egypt is affected negatively, because a lot of companies that work in IT in Egypt are outsourcing for companies abroad. And when you have like the companies abroad, when they are cooling down their costs, when they are cooling down their expenses, uh, you don't the, agencies in Egypt and other countries, they don't get as much work as before. So, and I believe this would hit the game industry too in Egypt, because I'm not aware of any company in Egypt that are self-publishing their games or stuff like that. There are in Turkey, but not in Egypt. So all of them would be doing like outsourcing, and I'm sure they were affected too.
Oh yeah, like anyone will have been affected, especially with all the new budgets that have been coming out. Obviously, it's the new financial year over in the UK, and even if they're not based in Egypt, they're going to be outsourcing, to various countries. Egypt, might be one of them. So yeah, I'm sure companies over there have been affected. So you traveled to Japan, and then you went back. Have you thought about going to a different country again, maybe to UK, US, somewhere in Europe? and continuing your career there?
Well, I don't think right now, after all these years, I don't think I would want to be, I'm thinking of myself as a founder because I already have an office. Okay, I have people working under me for so many years. Okay, and yes, so if I move to another country other than Turkey, it would be to start my own venture and not and or continue my venture and not to be as an employee. Yes, so I don't think I want to be an employee again, except if it is something that would be life changing. For example, if I get like a job at a triple A studio that would like change the way I'm perceived. Okay, uh, because if I worked on a triple A title on, but of course I would need to have like a good position in this company, so that I can say, okay, I have worked on this triple A title as for example, the lead developer, for example, or something like that. If it is something like that, I would be interested, but I don't think any company would give me this chance, right? Uh, so if I'm not giving this a chance, I would say I would continue as as a freelancer. I would continue as an entrepreneur because okay, I didn't talk about my venture in Turkey. As I said, I started my own office there, and I still have it. And I actually created a blockchain gaming project. It's called the Game Forest, and you know I believe it's a very strong project, and I'm sure that if I have the right opportunity, it would be very successful. If you want to check it out, it is the dash game dash forest dot finance, and yes, my ambitions would be to continue working on the game forest and to create my own game studio, hopefully in Turkey or maybe in another country. But for now, it's Turkey. Yes, and until then, until I get enough income from my own games and from my own studio, I would have to continue outsourcing my work as a freelancer, and of course with my team.
Oh, okay, so as a game developer, do you work on many of your own projects? Like you touched on mobile games, hyperactive, games. Do you, because they're usually smaller in size, quicker to develop? Do you make your own games and do you publish them, or is it a matter of just doing client work and that's where you leave the game development?
Yes, so I have, of course, I do work on my own stuff because I want to grow as an agency. I want to grow as a studio. Okay, so I work on my own stuff, but I don't work on like very light games like the hyper casual games and stuff. I did create a hyper casual game and I published it, but I know that hyper casual games are not going to be like successful except if you have like a huge publisher, or you have like a huge budget to market it. So I just created like to showcase that we can create casual games for clients, but I don't really like developing casual games. So I'm working on like larger projects, like for example the Game Forest, which is as I said, a blockchain gaming store. And this is something huge, okay. But I created MVP, and of course not. I wasn't alone, but I did most of the work alone. And I also working on a PC game. The problem is that the scale is big for this game, and I didn't finish it yet. And of course, because I have to also do client work, and this doesn't give me the time to finish the games that I'm trying to create. But this is my ambitious. I don't, you know, I don't want to I would not want my studio to always be, only freelancing. I want to create my own projects, and I did create my own projects. And the games that I'm working on is just too large to finish when I'm doing work like that. So that's why I created the game forest, which is a block-based chain project, and I created the MVP, and hopefully from this the game forest, hopefully I make enough funds to be able to continue working on my own games in my own studio, and have another department in my studio for freelance work and outsourcing, and another for like in-house development. So those are what I'm looking forward to and what I'm trying to achieve. It's not easy, of course, and I think this is the struggle for all creative freelancers, whether they are movie creators or artists or game developers. They always struggle between creating their own high quality projects and creating, for others to be able to make a living. So I'm having the same struggle, just like everyone else in this field, and and I'm hopeful that I will be able to achieve success for my own projects soon.
Okay. And as a freelance game developer, do you, when you're doing projects, let's say you're working on a project for 3 months, 6 months, then you're looking for the next one. When are you, this is really, I'd say, advice for others, how you approach it. When you know your project's coming up to an end, let's say 6 months, when do you start looking for your next project? Are you looking from the start of your current project? Are you looking at the tail end? Do you wrap up a project? Do you take some time off? Then do you look? How do you, so when do you look? Because projects could, especially when you are doing it more on a hourly, daily rate, a project could be a week, a project could be 6 months. There's not that certainty when it might end. It's not like, okay, you're signing a 12-month contract. As long as you don't get fired, you're there for 12 months.
Yes, I understand this. So actually, this is very hard to decide because I would say, okay, you I have enough experience, okay, that when I'm working with a client, I would feel that okay, the contract is about him. I just feel it, okay. It's hard to tell, but it's just experience, okay. I have been like a freelancer for 10 years, so I would know this client is probably going to end his contract in a week or 2 weeks.
What's that
It
feeling? Can you try and explain that? Because again, I feel like there'll be people listening that'll want to do freelance work, do some sort of contracting work, and having done it myself, I know what you mean. Eh, you know, you do kind of get a vibe. Like, well, what's the vibe that you get, and what are some of the things to look out for? Because obviously, it's you got to look out for yourself.
Yes, yes, of course. So one thing that would give you a red light is when the client talks about sales. Okay, so when you say, okay, we didn't make enough sales this month, for
Okay.
example, we don't have enough income, or some in anything like that, or okay, for example, okay, we need to create to do something so that we increase the income a little, or something like that. When he says that, it means that he's struggling financially, and if he is struggling financially, of course he would lay off freelancers first before anyone else, and it makes sense. It's part of the deal. As a freelancer, you
Yeah.
are kind of accepting this, that you are gone anytime, right?
Yeah. Plus, they
Uh,
are usually paid the most as well, so they want, yeah, the ones that are costing the most amount of money out as well, compared to the permanent employees.
exactly. And that's why you have to charge a lot, because you will be gone first, right? And if you are not paid a lot, It means that once you are gone, you don't have time to search for another job. So you have to, and this is a part of the struggle as a freelancer, because you have to ask for higher rates, okay? Because you stay without work for longer time, right? So you don't have any guaranteed income for longer time, unlike an employee. So if a client doesn't give you this, if he wants like to pay you like $15 per hour or or something ridiculous like that, it means that you don't get the advantage of a full time employee, which is guaranteed income, and you still don't get enough money. So don't accept this kind of work. Okay, you might have to accept this at the beginning, but then you need to understand this. And yes, so I usually start searching for other jobs when I started to get this vibe that my current work is about to end. And I would say during my like professional freelance career for over 10 years, I have always struggled to find the next job before my money runs out. you know, it's almost always guaranteed that when I finish contract with one client, until I get a contract from another client, I get another income. It would be very hard financially, and I had to like let some people go, other freelancers that I hired for bigger projects because of this. It happened to me several times before, and like it always happens, and I believe it will happen again, because as I said, it's hard to get like quality freelance, quality clients as a freelancer who appreciate your work, who understands that you need to be paid more because you don't have any guaranteed income, and because you stay without work for longer time, and because you don't get any insurance, you don't get any benefits, right? uh, so it's hard to get those kind of clients. So I would always be like very very wary of my current clients, and if I feel anything that is not going as the client intended, I just start to search for other jobs immediately. And even so, I do this always. I always end up with like longer time without an income, and this like causes a lot of problems for me and for people who work with me. But it's part of the deal, I guess. I'm I'm not really sure of how would this be solved, because I didn't solve it myself. Yes.
Yeah, it is something that will play contractors and freelancers, and I think like I haven't done contract and freelance work myself. I know what you mean. There's times where it's going really well, and you've got loads of work, and even other work that you're turning down, and then there's times where you need that work and there's nothing, like there's nothing at all. And it's something that over time, as you go through those hurdles and those struggles, you figure out, okay, how much savings that you need to have, how you're going to manage it, how you're mentally going to get through it. So it is one of the things that you have to go through to be able to know how to go through it. Unfortunately, obviously when you're doing freelance work, your own you'll be going by your own schedule a lot of the times, at least on a daily and weekly basis. How do you do effective time management? What sort of project management tools do you use as a freelancer?
Well, most of the time I do work with one client at a time. Okay, so yes, so I just I would use Notepad to log my hours. I start like at, well, for example, I start at 10 o'clock, and then when I finish, like I log that into Notepad. Uh, I don't use any fancy tools for this. And of course, for task management and stuff like that, it depends on the client. So I do prefer like something like of course, Jira, and yes, and some clients use Jira, some clients use Trello. And if they don't use any kind of management like that, I will just create a board for myself on Jira or Trello. But it's usually a red flag if you have a client that doesn't have a Trello or Jira or any kind of project management. It's usually a red flag. So they usually have something, and then I would use it. And if they don't, I would create it myself. Yes. So yes, I don't really do anything fancy with managing my time and stuff like that. If I finish my hourly limit during the week, I start to work on my own stuff. And if I have someone working with me, a freelancer that I had, if I joined as a team, yes, I tried. I have to keep communicating with the freelancers that I hired, so that they don't know they know what they are doing, and they always have their hands full, and they are managing their time correctly. So yes, I have to do this, and have to balance between this and doing my own tasks too. So between managing the other freelancers and between doing my own jobs. Yes, so I don't really do use any fancy tools. It's just by heart, because I work on a lot of projects, and I just have this, like, you know feel of how to manage things. And yes, I think I'm pretty successful with managing my project and my time and my team. Uh, yes.
Okay. And what projects would you ideally like to work on with a client if you had a choice? Either technology or the type of project itself.
Well, ideally, I would want to work on a VR game, a full VR title, like the one I was working on, Total Baseball. I really enjoyed working on that one, or a PC game, or a console game that are 3D action adventure PC game, or console game that is story driven. That's ideally what I would want to work with. I don't care about the technology. I would be able to work it on Unity or Unreal. I do prefer Unity or Unreal for those kind of projects, because if you go larger scale, it's hard to use as low level tools, because those are big projects. So Unity or Unreal would provide wouldn't be an overkill for this kind of project. Actually, they would be necessary. And I would prefer if the client, uh, I would prefer, either the client would have like a great team, and I will join this team, or if he doesn't have a great team, he will just entrust me as a game, uh, you know, director and producer, to have my own team, and to create everything for him, and to outsource the whole project to me, or at least for example the development part, or whatever, because I believe I am good with managing those kind of projects, and I do have enough experience to manage those kind of projects and manage my own team, and I have a lot of connections in all over the world from other game developers that will be able to create my own team, and manage something like that. It's really my dream to have something like that. Yes.
Okay, so more VR based. So talking about VR, do you play a lot of VR, or is it more just development? And if you do play VR, what are some of your favorite games and experiences? And what's your go-to headset? Your favorite one?
Yes, actually, I love playing VR, actually, and unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time to play games generally, because I spend too much time working. But I do I'm aware that I need to increase my time playing games. So as one VR game that I really liked, I don't I really like slow based VR games, and the one game VR game that I really got into I don't remember its name right now. Let me try to get its name. Uh, okay, it was released to PlayStation VR, and it is I played it on PC. It was on Viveboard. Uh, okay, in- I don't remember its name right now, but okay, it has something. There was like a nuclear, you know, disaster and stuff like that, and you were exploring, post-apocalypse world, and there was some action, and I
Not
really
Red
loved.
Matter. Is Red Matter? No, I don't think that has.
No, I know it's not Red Matter. No, perhaps if I got. Okay, I don't want to waste time trying to search for the game's name, but I really liked it because it had like a lot of exploration, a lot some puzzle and stuff like that, and more than action itself. And you know, action in VR games it can be enjoyable, but for only you know a short time until you get like at least for me, I start to get this motion sickness and stuff like that. So I like slow based exploration based VR titles like that one, which I don't remember its name unfortunately. Oh yes, and actually the visual novel Tokyo Chronos. I really like the visual novel Tokyo Chronos. It's very slow based. It has like beautiful environments, and I do like visual novels in general. So yes, I play. I didn't, of course I didn't finish Tokyo Chronos, but I really enjoyed playing it. It was in Steam, and I played it on and my go to headset is Oculus Quest 2, and I usually play PC games through Oculus Link. Yes, so and yes, I did play Super Hot, and I enjoyed it. I Until I was stuck at one level, it was very hard for me to get through, and I tried several times, and then I just gave up. Uh, yes, but I do enjoy. Like visual novels and exploration games more than I would like enjoy something like Superhot and stuff like that. But I really like Superhot because how the environment actually, I really like the environment. I I enjoyed, I wish they have given me more chance to explore this like this city after I killed my enemies, for example, but it never gave me this chance. The game, yes, and this is generally what I like playing in VR. And for PC games, I really like action adventure games. Um, one recent game that I really enjoyed is a Black Tail, and I played the first part, and I'm playing through the second part, and I really enjoy those kind of games on PC.
Okay. And what's your favorite non VR games of all time? And are there any games that you're playing right now, non VR games?
Well, right now I'm Black Tail Innocence.
Yeah.
I think like I am about 80% into it, and yes, I love it. It's really uh, you know you have a lot of recent games that they don't really have a soul. They don't have like this story that would that would move you, okay, move you emotionally. That it does you don't have those characters that you would feel attached to. But actually, I think a Black Tail have achieved all that because I miss this in games. I miss being attached to the character in the game. I miss that. Games have improved a lot in graphically and technologically and in terms of gameplay. But I love story-based games. I love to have good story. I love to be attached to the character, and I think a Black Tail has this feeling in it, and I really like this because of that. And if if I want to say what's my favorite game at all times, I would say Metal Gear Solid, the one that was on PlayStation. You know, the first 3D Metal Gear game. I loved it. Actually, it inspires a lot of what I'm trying to do right now. And yes, the story is top notch. It has a huge focus on storytelling without sacrificing the gameplay also. So I love I think and I think it did change the game industry forever. And I still remember it until now. I first played it like I don't remember, maybe perhaps 20 years ago or something like that. And I still have this feeling when I see videos of it on YouTube or Blade. It really moved me a lot. Yes.
Okay. And with when you're playing PC games, is it a matter of what's your preferred way? Is it like sitting down on the desk, with a monitor, keyboard and mouse, with a controller, with more on a home theater setup where you sit in with a TV but connected to your computer, or is it using something more like a portable PC console like the Steam Deck or the Asus ROG Ally?
Yeah, so I use actually my own development PC for also gaming, and yes, play with always with my gamepad. So if a game doesn't support the gamepad, I usually it just turns me off. I don't play first-person shooters. Anything that requires like that is stressful and requires focus and requires accuracy and stuff like that. So perhaps because my game time is like relaxing time for me. So this one perhaps this is why I love those kinds of games. Yes, so I usually play with my gamepad attached to my game development PC and on the same desk that I work from. And I can't go to the TV, of course, because the kids are always watch the TV. So and it's dangerous if I try to. They are still young, since they are 5 years old, and I don't want them to get into console gaming right now. So if I attach the console there or a gaming PC there, they would want to play like me, and I don't want them to get into this at this very young age.
Okay, at what age do you want your kids to get into gaming and more stuff like that? I know that's the concern for a lot of parents. At what stage do they get them into that? And it's very interesting to hear it, come from somebody who's in video games, who's into tech, but wants to restrict it a bit.
Yes, I actually allow them to play a little on my work PC, but because as I said, I have my office in Turkey, but I still do a lot of work from home, and I have my own room in home that I work from. Sometimes I do allow them to go into my room and to play, but under my supervision for only little time, half an hour, sequence, something like that. But I don't know. I don't want to leave it to them to just play for whatever, however long or open whatever games they would like. And I do the same actually for smartphones. I don't. I only make them play if under my supervision for a very short time. Otherwise, I just don't give them my smartphone and they do whatever they want. And I believe that I wouldn't give them this freedom until like at least like 10 years, for example. Perhaps perhaps I would give them more time on it and under my supervision, after like 6 years or 7 years. But I wouldn't give like total freedom until like 10 years old, and even after 10 years old, it wouldn't be total freedom. But I would give a little bit more freedom after 10 years. Uh, I think these video games are beneficial and are good. But at this at this age, I think they have like this tendency to absorb anything they see. and it's better to control what they say, and so that they they don't absorb something negative, and to at this time it's better to absorb like education. It's better to absorb like family relations and stuff like that. So yes, this is my thinking regarding this.
Okay, I mean, I know what you mean because as a father myself now of two children, it's something that comes to my mind. I'm heavily into games, heavily into tech. I want them to get into that, but I still want them to be aware of the surroundings, be aware of what's going on, and enjoy life when they don't have a tablet or if they're not playing the games or whatever it is. But then, likewise, I want to enjoy that with them. Like that's one thing because they're still young at the moment. But one thing I'm excited about is being able to sit down and play video games with them, but I want to be able to turn that off and then say, okay, we're going to go and eat, or we're going to go out, or we're going to play something else, but that's not a video game. Do something else, like read a book, and for them still to be excited by that and not to be so addicted to technology that they forego all of the other good aspects of life that aren't, things that you switch on to.
Yes, I completely agree, and I think one of the reasons I am being too restrictive with them is because I didn't enjoy my childhood because of technology. You know, I was very into like programming at a very young age, and I was like I geek for if that's something, and I wasn't very social, and it is affecting me up until now. I don't have a lot of friends because I didn't make a lot of friends when I was young. And usually, the friends that you make when you are young are those who stick with you after this. Otherwise, anyone you get to know at work or something like that, he would be an acquaintance, not a friend, really. So I don't want them to go through what I'm going through socially. I will. This is part of why I took this decision.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. Obviously, it is. You're right. The people that you know at work are more like acquaintances, and once you leave that job or that project, you most of the time you don't talk to them anymore, and they don't talk to you. And that's something that I feel like when you're young but getting into the workplace, you don't understand. You think, oh, these people are great, but it is not the same as the friends you make at a younger age or even at university. Those friends, even if you don't talk to them for 5 years, you can still go back and talk to them and it won't feel weird. Whereas if you go back and talk to a work colleague that you haven't spoke to for 5, 10 years, that you happen to be on some project for 2 months, it's going to be weird. Like you message them, they're probably gonna be thinking, why is he messaging me? I don't care about him. And then you're probably going to feel weird messaging them. So yes, like getting that balance where the kids can be sociable and make friends and join clubs and do other things outside of tech is definitely important.
Yes, I totally agree.
So that's literally all the questions I have for the podcast today, Abdullah. Before we wrap up, though, I'd like you to. I mean, we've had a lot of important things that we've talked about, a lot of advice for people that are getting into freelance and contract work. But if you had to sum it up, what would be your main advice for somebody that's doing contract and freelancing work or is looking to get into that? To be successful in that, because again, you have your own company around it. You've hired people, you've fired people, so it's more than just a one-man band. What recommendation would you give, the best piece of advice, if you had to
Okay, so
go back?
yes, so I would say that uh, first of all, I'm not very successful, so I would tell them what I think is the best. But of course, my advice wouldn't be the best because what worked for me might not work for you, and of course I'm not very successful. So if I know the key to success, I would have been more successful. So I would say that uh, I have been at my early career. I have been late when I asked for for what I think I should be worth, because I took like a very low rate for so long. And if you are just starting and you have to do, and I know for low rates, it's understandable. Just don't do this like for 5 years. You do it for maximum 1 year, and then you start to get, what you would be, what can sustain you as a freelancer. And you always have to keep in mind that you are going to not have to work for long time. Okay. Another advice is that don't be too optimistic. Even if the client, everything looks good, even if you think this client is going to have you for 1 year, this can change in a minute. Okay. Any small uh, problem that happens to the client, he would think of getting you off first. So just don't be too optimistic. Always keep in mind that whatever gig you are working on right now is not going to last. So you have to be mentally, ready for this, and of course financially. Keep a lot of money always. Okay. If you don't have this tendency that to spend all the money that you just made from your from work, because you will need it after this client until you find another job. So keep your expenses to the minimum, whether personal expenses or business expenses. If you want to start an official company and an official agency, that's great. But don't do this until you are sure that you have enough reputation and you have enough clients to sustain this. Otherwise, you would have to close your office. You would have to fire people and stuff like that. So yes, so and be patient. Don't just take any jobs because you are desperate, because it's always going to affect you negatively. And it's hard to get a good client, but you just need to struggle a lot to do it, and you have to do it. If you don't get to those good clients, you will be in this vicious cycle with bad clients, and you will never grow. Yes, I don't think Upwork is the perfect place to find good clients. So you have to make a lot of connections, and you have to uh, preferably, and you have to make real connections, not just connections on LinkedIn that you never uh, met or worked with before. If you work with someone, just make sure that a good client. Make sure he's satisfied. Make sure that you get into his circle, and keep contacting with him, and try to get other clients through this first client. Because if he's a good client and if he appreciates you, chances are he would be able to introduce you to someone who appreciates you and who's also good business. That's in general. Yes, I don't have anything concrete to say. It's just a journey, okay? And you would learn as you go, and you would go into pitfalls, and you would. It's a painful journey, okay? You would just don't give up, and if it is something that you want to do, you can be successful. It's not impossible. It's just very hard, just like everything else in the world. And you will learn as you go.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that's really good, advice, especially around the saving side and not keeping your rates too low for too long. Yeah, yeah. Obviously, if you're young, you're starting out. Yeah, people aren't probably going to pay you that much, but don't keep saying yes for all the clients' demands, or doing it at a low rate. And it's something that you mentioned earlier as well, that they will come back to you, especially if you are dealing with clients from Upwork or websites like that. They will come back and say, "Oh, somebody else will pay me this, and I can pay somebody else this much and do it, and it'd be a fraction of what you're doing it for." My recommendation is, as soon as a client comes with that, they are not going to be a good client. They are not going to be the type that will pay you what you want or what you deserve. At that point, you just in a friendly manner say, "You're welcome to go with that client." Then, I mean, with that, freelance with that contract, I'm clearly not the person suited for your budget. Thank you very much. You keep it nice, you keep it civil, but you basically, you put the ball in their court. And sometimes that might be them testing you and they're like, okay, no, no, we still want to work with you. We just see if we can get a bit of a discount. Sometimes it is a matter of getting rid of a toxic client.
Exactly, exactly. Yes. You said something very important here, is that you have to be polite, even if the client is bad, because sometimes, those kind of clients would go on with other freelancers, and then they will understand that, okay, those other freelancers are really scammers. you know they are scamming him by giving him very low budget and not really delivering something useful, and they would get back to you, but they would only get back to you if you are polite. If you are not polite, they wouldn't get back to you, even if they discover that you were right. I have made mistakes before in those regards, because I was under financial stress or something like that, and I would have the client not agreeing to the rate I would say, and and still telling me, okay, I have other freelancers that would say this and that. As tell him, okay, I'm pretty sure that those freelancers are not going to deliver you what you want. It's impossible to deliver with this budget. And I would say it, and I did the mistake to say it impolitely, and then I would have this client, discovering that what I said was true, and he's telling me, okay, you are right, but he's not hiring me again. Why? Because I wasn't very smart at giving him this information. Just keep, be polite. Don't be impatient with the client, and of course, if the client is toxic, just be polite with him, in your work with him, and you always have this problem with Upwork, dating and stuff like that. And I had like toxic clients getting my rating down, and this makes it very hard to get jobs. But sometimes it's the client's mistake, sometimes it's my mistake for not being smart. But as a case, it's not the end of the world, okay? Even if this happens to you, it's not the end of the world, because it happened to me several times before, and I'm still sustaining my freelance development, and my rate went back to be perfect on Upwork. It's hard when this happens, when you have like when you have a client that you just drag your score down below 80%. It's hard, but it's something that I went through, at least three times, and every time I revived. So don't be desperate if this happens to you. Just be polite and be smart, and go on with your life if something like this happens.
Oh yeah, I think that's definitely really important advice when dealing with clients as well. Is be friendly because, like you said, you don't know when they might come back. They might be saying, "No, we got somebody else cheaper," and they go with them. They realize it's not that good. It's a mess, and they're like, "Oh, I remember Abdullah. He was friendly. He knew what he was talking about. Maybe I should have paid more. I'll take the hit and I'll pay him now." Whereas if he was rude, or it might not even be that you was rude. If in the moment you kind of help them out, give them some advice, give if they're asking for that, you give them some pointers. They might be like, "Oh, I remember Abdullah, he gave me some pointers. He didn't charge for that." And again, you don't want to be spending days on that, but like if it's on the call, it might literally just be an offhanded comment. It might just be a quick, here's two links that I would recommend for that type of project. These will help you if you've never created something like that before. They'll remember that, and they'll think, okay, he was an expert, he was friendly, he helped, even though I was going to go with a different client, a different vendor, a different freelancer, even though it was his business, you know, it was business he was going to lose. He was still friendly about it, or they might recommend you to someone else. They might not have the budget for you, but they might say, "We know this guy called Abdullah. He, you know, his work seemed good. He was very friendly. He was very knowledgeable. A bit out of our price point, but your price point, like some, you know, other colleague that they know, you don't know. Like it comes around, you know, especially given enough time. Whether that's you're speaking to a client, whether that's you're speaking to a recruiter doing some sort of, you know, contract work, you know, be friendly about it because you never know when somebody might mention somebody else, or somebody might know somebody at another, you know, client that you worked with, and they might touch base with them, and they be like, "Oh yeah, I remember Abdullah. He was very nice. You know, we didn't keep him because the budget was a bit too, you know, we didn't have the budget, but you know, he was good." So you never know. Whereas you don't want them to say we didn't keep him and he was horrible about it as well.
Exactly, exactly. Yes, I completely agree with you.
So that's it, everyone, for this week's episode of FireDev. So I want to thank Abdullah for coming on today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I want to thank everyone for tuning in to this week's episode of FireDev. I'll see you all in next week's episode. Bye bye.